Again. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this session on coffee consumption. The session is set to explore the burgeoning Indian domestic market and its emerging opportunities, successful strategies for increasing coffee consumption through insightful case studies, the intriguing link between coffee and health, among others. The talks will also be followed by a panel discussion, and then the floor will be open to Q&A session. So the session will be chaired by Shri G.V. Krishna Rao, IAS, former chairman of Coffee Board of India. A big round of applause to welcome him, please. A warm welcome, sir. Then followed by which a presentation by Dr. Bruno Mala Miotto, Consultant, Heart Institute. A warm welcome to you too, sir. Ms. Kelly Goodjohn, Vice President, Global Coffee Sustainability and Education at Starbucks. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. Dr. Khoa Dang Lee, General Research Manager, Western Highlands Agroforestry Science Institute. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Bernard N. Jacobi, Deputy Director, Regulation and Compliance, Agriculture and Food Authority. So once again, on behalf of World Coffee Conference, a very warm welcome to each one of you, and thank you for being here. Over to the chair now.
Good morning, everybody. We have about 1.5 hours for our session, and we have 4 speakers. So I briefly introduce each one of them, and each one of them will have a presentation for about 15 to 20 minutes, and followed by panel discussion. First speaker is going to be Dr. Bruno Mala Miotto. He is a cardiologist, consultant, Heart Institute. He is going to speak on coffee and health. He works at Sao Paulo, Brazil. He is a MD and PhD from Sao Paulo University. He worked as assistant professor in medical school, Sao Paulo University, then MD investigator at the Coffee and Heart Research Unit. So that was his background, why he is into coffee, being a cardiologist. So we can look forward for a very exciting inputs in terms of how coffee can impact our heart health. Next speaker is going to be Ms. Kelly Goodjohn. She is Vice President, Global Coffee Sustainability and Education, Starbucks. She is going to make a presentation, a case study of Starbucks. She leads the company's strategy and governance of its coffee, tea, and cocoa sustainability programs and Starbucks coffee engagement, education, and experience programs for partners, that is employees. Kelly and her team shepherded company strategy of its coffee sustainability programs, including environmental sustainability, social sustainability, traceability, and women's empowerment commitments. It is a huge area she works in. They partner closely with many stakeholders, including governments, trade associations, industry peers, NGOs, Conservation International, and support the vision of ensuring a future of coffee for all. Additionally, Kelly and her team are responsible for implementing coffee education strategies, including Starbucks Coffee Academy and Leadership in Origin to engage Starbucks partners around coffee. I think each one will bring a different perspective, having a bearing on the consumption of coffee. Our third speaker is Dr. Khoa Dang Lee. He did his BSc honors in plant protection at Vietnam National University of Agriculture and began his career as a plant protector at the Western Highlands Agriculture and Forestry Science Institute, WASI, in Vietnam. He has been working all along with WASI, but in between he was on a sabbatical on 2 occasions, once to pursue his master's in environmental science and policy at Clark University in USA, and next he pursued his PhD in University of Sydney, and he continues to work with WASI. and he is going to speak on what's happening in Vietnam. All of us are excited to know as to the developments in Vietnam. We only know about Vietnam as a very fast-growing, producing country, but how it is impacting what is happening in the consumption side also, he is going to throw light on it. Our fourth speaker is going to be Mr. Bernard N. Gichovi. He is Acting Deputy Director for Regulation and Compliance at the Agriculture and Food Authority, Coffee Directorate, Nairobi, Kenya. So he is Masters in Human Resource Management, Bachelor's in Agribusiness Management, and Diploma in Agriculture and Food Marketing. So he covers the entire gamut of whatever is needed to understand the coffee. He has been in coffee for last 25 years. He has been working in various capacities, and he will bring us what's happening in Kenya in the coffee sector. Briefly, just a few remarks from my side before I hand over the floor to the speakers. Historically, coffee consumption was growing in the importing countries in the developed world. But the consumption growth in these markets is plateauing, and whereas the production has been increasing, especially in the large producers like Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia, etc. And given the pace of production increase and plateauing of the consumption in the importing countries, it is imperative any consumption growth has to happen in the producing countries. That's how, apart from Starbucks, we have remaining three speakers are from the producing countries. So to help us understand as to what's happening in the producing countries. Broadly, at a macro level, if you look at the ICO statistics itself, in the last 10 years, say from 2010 to 2020, whatever additional consumption has happened all over the world, majority of this additional consumption already started happening in the producing countries. So largely, the growth is led by Brazil, but Brazil started the effort more than 2 decades ago, but slowly other producing countries are catching up. So that's the way forward. Let us see what is happening based on our presentations from other speakers. With these words, I hand over the floor to the first speaker, Dr. Bruno Maller-Mioto. Bruno.
Hello, my name is Bruno Mioto, and first of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here in India and participating in this important conference. Currently, I work in a research unit that assesses the effects of regular coffee consumption on human health. Coffee is a great passion for me. Today, I will give you a broad overview of the key impacts of regular coffee consumption on human health. Many people are unfamiliar with this topic and believe that coffee is harmful. Is this true? Coffee, after water, is most widely consumed beverage in Brazil and the United States, and is the principal source of caffeine intake among adults. We chose coffee as the beverage we consume right up in the waking up. It activates the cerebral cortex, facilitating process of memory, attention, and learning. Coffee is a complex beverage containing hundreds of biologically active compounds, and the health effects of chronic coffee intakes are widely ranging. Caffeine, the most famous active compound, is a central nervous system stimulant, and its regular use typically causes mild physical dependence, as evidenced by development of tolerance and withdrawal symptoms like headaches, irritability, fatigue, and difficult concentration. In terms, caffeine and coffee are often conflated in both the medical literature and public perception. But coffee is much more than just caffeine. Coffee is a complex beverage containing more than 1,000 compounds. The biological effects of coffee cannot be reduced to the isolated effects of caffeine that it contains. Among the many with known biological activity are caffeine, a potent stimulant and bronchodilator, diterpenes alcohols, which can increase in serum cholesterol, and chlorogenic acid, one of many types of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds found in coffee. Coffee beans have a higher amount of chlorogenic acids than caffeine itself. Because this, studies suggest that coffee represents one of the primary sources of antioxidants in the human diet. Another very important topic is the relationship between coffee consumption and the risk of developing diabetes. Studies have shown that coffee consumption is related to a lower incidence of type 2 diabetes mellitus. A meta-analysis demonstrates an inverse association between coffee consumption and the incidence of diabetes. For each 150 ml of coffee consumed per day, the risk of developing the disease decreased by 7%. Taken together, these studies show a significant benefit, especially considering how being diabetic increases the risk of cardiovascular events. Hypertension is another important risk factor for the development of cardiovascular disease. Coffee consumption has been associated with acute increases in blood pressure in caffeine-naive people, but exerts negligible effects on the long-term level of blood pressure in habitual coffee drinkers. The acute effects of coffee are transient, and with regular intake, tolerance develops to the hemodynamic and humoral effects of caffeine. A recent meta-analysis, a recent study showing no clinical importance effects of long-term coffee consumption on blood pressure or risk of hypertension. Knowing all of these effects, cold coffee consumption bring benefits of cardiovascular health? A no-linear association between coffee consumption and cardiovascular risk was observed in this meta-analysis. Moderate coffee consumption was inversely significantly associated with cardiovascular risk, with lower risk at 3 to 4 cups per day. And heavy coffee consumption was not associated with elevated cardiovascular risk. The best benefit is about 3 to 4 cups. Other cardiovascular effects are also important too. Coffee may reduce the risk of ischemic stroke. People who drank 4 cups of coffee per day tended to have fewer cardiac arrhythmias including less atrial fibrillation, in terms of the risk of developing heart failure, was observed a strongest inverse association noted for 4 cups per day. In medicine, there is no outcome harsher than death. Could coffee consumption be a protective factor? Decades-old studies suggest coffee consumption may cause adverse cardiovascular events, including an increased risk of myocardial infarction. Early studies may have been flagged to factors they didn't account for. In later analysis, when they considered other important health factors like smoking, alcohol use, saturated fat intake, exercise, and body weight, it seemed that regular coffee drinking had a lower risk of overall and cardiovascular-related mortality. A large prospective study examined the association of coffee drinkers with subsequent total and cause-specific mortality among more than 400,000 people. Oops. In this study, coffee consumption was inversely associated with total and cause-specific mortality. Still talking about the risk of death, does the brew method matter? Well, altogether, more than 500,000 men and women participating in Norwegian cardiovascular surveys are followed for an average of 20 years with respect to cause-specific mortality. In this study, they found a higher total and cardiovascular mortality for unfiltered than for filtered coffee consumption. The lowest mortality was among consumers of 1 to 4 cups of filtered coffee per day. What could explain this difference? This difference of filtered and no filtered coffee? Coffee contains cholesterol-increasing compounds classified as disterpenes, including cafestol and chiol. Importantly, the concentration of these compounds depends on how coffee is prepared. Boiled coffee has higher concentration because dispertans are extracted from the coffee beans by prolonged contact with the hot water. By comparison, brewed filtered coffee, because of the much shorter contact with hot water and retention of dispertan by filter, has a much lower concentration of cafestol and chiol. I showed a lot of data of the impact of coffee consumption on cardiovascular health. Now, I'm going to address other effects of coffee on human health. Coffee may reduce the risk of depression, a no-risk factor for the development of cardiovascular disease, as well as an independent predictor of poor prognosis. In a recent longitudinal study of 50,000 women ingesting 4 cups of coffee daily, significantly decreased the relative risk of depression. The effect may be due largely to the caffeine contained, because women consuming decaffeinated coffee did not show a reduced risk. Other effects may include reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's dementia, and other diseases of central nervous system like Parkinson's disease. Furthermore, coffee may improve asthma symptoms and enhance performance and sustain exercise. Other important point, high levels of caffeine may increase urinary output and urinary calcium and magnesium excretion, which has implications for the bone health. I conclude this presentation by stating that coffee can be included as a part of a healthy diet for the general public and also for those with increased cardiovascular risk or cardiovascular disease. Those with dyslipidemia may consider brewed and filtered coffee as opposed to the preparations made from boiled beans without filtering. For those who experience uncomfortable effects from caffeine stimulation, decaffeinated coffee seems to offer some health benefits too and may be a reasonable option. Drinkers of caffeinated coffee, in particular, might advise to ensure adequate calcium consumption from dietary sources. So, my dear friends, don't let the coffee get cold. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Bruno. I think you raised the curiosity level much higher in the context of the effects on cardiac health and also the brewing techniques, how it affects the benefits. Now, may I request Ms. Kelly Goodjohn to make her presentation.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Bruno, that was fantastic. I learned a lot and really appreciate your comments. My name is Kelly Goodjohn, and I'm with Starbucks. And it's a real pleasure to be amongst all of you coffee lovers. And I've been asked to share the business case of Starbucks in the context of coffee consumption. And I'm really excited to follow Dr. Bruno because to his point around depression, I think there's a really important connection to coffee and connection, and coffee has that ability to bring us together. And especially coming out of this post-pandemic world, where we are seeing records of loneliness happening around the world, let's all think about how coffee might serve as a vehicle for that human connection. For Starbucks, we have always taken the approach of being a different type of company. And in fact, coffee is at our core. It's part of our DNA. And as I mentioned, that role that coffee can play to connect human beings is really at the center of our ambition. We know that coffee has the power to connect, and that's something we take very seriously. But I should add that our growth and success has always been anchored in the success of the coffee community, in prosperity for farmers. And so as we look at our ambition, we really aim to build a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable future for coffee, the communities, and the planet. And we're doing that in a number of ways. And I want to spend a minute to talk about those because if we don't have a healthy supply chain, if we don't have consistent high-quality coffee, we will not be able to grow consumption and meet the expectations and demands of our customers. And if you heard Michelle Burns yesterday speak during the Circular Economy and Regenerative Agriculture session, you would have heard some of the things that are important that we're undertaking. For over 2 decades, we have been supporting coffee farmers through farmer support centers and offering technical assistance. Through our CAFE practices, coffee and farmer equity practices, which ensures not only economic transparency and is pursuing a sustainable livelihood, but also ensures the social and environmental components of farming is of high standards. And quality. Quality has been a consistent driver for the brand and has led to the success of our brand over time. And we strongly believe that to grow coffee consumption, we need to have a resilient coffee industry that is underpinned with coffee quality and consistency. So we at Starbucks like to talk about the first 10 feet of coffee being at origin, talking about coffee farmers, all the way to the last 10 feet, which is that experience and that moment when customers get to enjoy their beverage. And for Starbucks, we want to be a source of good in the world, both at the first 10 feet and the last 10 feet. And our baristas and everyone involved in the process are truly important to create that environment where human connection can happen. As we look at the role of our baristas, they're a key driver of success and consumption. And I'm proud to say that over the last year, we've made a commitment to invest $1 billion in our partners. That's what we call our employees, our partners, so that they can continue to have coffee education, that they can have a great work environment, and that they get the training and business success that will help them in their career. And the investment we make in our people and in our coffee translates into the connection and the experience our customers have. We are a global brand, but it all comes down to that one connection that a customer has with a barista or with our product. And to enhance that customer experience, we need to continue to innovate. We're recently launching and rolling out a new on-demand hot coffee brewer. So Dr. Bruno, you'll be happy to hear that hot coffee is alive and well. And this new technology, the Vertica brewer, will create the highest quality on-demand cup of coffee in 30 seconds. And it also allows us to offer up a diverse set of origins that keeps our customers coming back and curious about coffee. So what started out as one store in the Pike Place Market of Seattle, Washington, in the United States, has grown quite a bit over the last 5 decades. What was true 51 years ago remains true today, and that's to provide the highest quality standards. That's in our stores, in our brand, and of course in our coffee. And as a company with over 100 million customer occasions each week, more than 37,000 stores around the world, and we're operating in 86 markets, the runway for global growth couldn't look brighter. And through our Global Coffee Alliance partnership with Nestle, we've expanded the reach of the Starbucks brand and premium products to more than 80 countries, and more than 14 billion cups of brewed at-home coffee are served through our food service channels in the last year alone. And as the 3rd largest roaster of coffee in the world, what we believe is a key differentiator, in addition to our people, is the diversification of our origins. And we're sourcing from more than 30 origins around the world. And if we think about why that's important for our consumers, there's a great parallel to wine. Just as if wine and the terroir of the regions are resonating with consumers, we know that coffee plays a very similar role. And customers have their niche. They have certain regions that speak to them, and we want to be able to offer that to customers. And what about our business in India? It is a great business in India, and we're very proud to be partnering with the Tata Global Beverages, who run and operate the retail stores here in India. We opened up our first store right around 12 years ago, and we've grown to over 350 stores across India. And what I'm proud to share is that we offer India-sourced espresso across our stores. And a few years ago, we launched a whole bean coffee, Diwali blend, that is also of India origin. So we're really proud of both the placement of Starbucks in India and the sourcing of coffee in the region. So I want to step back and speak to some global trends that we're following. So I'll start with global trends and then share how that translates into what we're seeing through the Starbucks business. There's 5 global trends that I want to talk about at a high level. And the first one is this concept of me mentality. So really, this is a trend we're seeing where, coming out of the pandemic, consumers are interested in refocusing on themselves and celebrating themselves. The second trend is around power to the people. And this is the concept of creative expression. The role that influencers and social media has had within the coffee industry, and the invitation to create new beverages and share them. I know in India, TikTok is not as pronounced, but around the world, the concept of a TikTok beverage is very relevant. The third concept is around hyper fatigue. And this speaks to customers who are trying to get away from the noise of the world, the pressures, the stress, and really looking at creating a moment of well-being. So that could be both through a mental or a physical well-being state. So to Dr. Bruno's point, there's some key relevance there. The fourth area of trends is on international localization. And simply put, this means customers want to see and experience products and services that are relevant in their local community. So if we go back to the example of the Indian-sourced espresso, that would be an example. And the fifth trend is on intentional spending. So we know that customers, price is always a driver for what consumers create their spending habits. But we're also seeing an increased relevance of other factors like convenience or like sustainability that are becoming higher parts of the overall decision making. So how does this translate to Starbucks and our business? So the good news is that demand for coffee has never been greater. And I'd like to talk about 3 key things that we're seeing within our own context. The first is that cold coffee is hot. Cold coffee is hot. And in the US alone, 70% of the beverages that we sell are cold coffee. And in fact, cold brew is a $1.2 billion business for us currently. It's the 3rd fastest segment within Starbucks. So cold coffee. The second specific Starbucks trend we're seeing is around customization. And think about your own coffee experience. Think about how you like your coffee. Do you like plant-based milk? Do you like adding extra shots of espresso? Do you want to add cold foam or hot foam to the top of your beverage? We are seeing increasing levels of customization happening within our business. That's a global trend. We're seeing a rise in plant-based milk options. And if you think about the menu, and the unlimited number of customization and combinations that you can make, it's a great thing for our customers, right? There's unlimited possibilities to create and innovate. And then I'd like to talk about the third place. The third place is a concept that is very important to Starbucks. It's that place between home and your work environment, where you can have a moment to connect, you can engage with others, or you can have a moment to yourself. And the business model for Starbucks has been built off the third place experience. Certainly during COVID, as our retail stores operated differently, the third place became a very different experience. And what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic is that there is a desire to get back to connecting with one another, even if it's by yourself in a store or a cafe, so that you've got a sense of being around others. And as we continue to grow, the third place is evolving. So while 97% of our stores around the world still have seating, which is probably what we're all familiar with, there's also an evolution of different formats that are becoming relevant in different circumstances. So if you think about increasing drive-through, if you think about pickup and delivery, those are new ways that the third place is expanding. And digital is absolutely critical and relevant for our business. In fact, today we have over 60 million Starbucks Rewards customers around the world. Half of those are in the United States, but half of those are outside of the United States. And in the United States, 1 in 10 customers, or 1 in 10 people, adults in the United States, are Starbucks Rewards members. And 50% of our business is done through drive-through, and 20% is through delivery. So you're seeing the third place evolve and change over time. Convenience is a core component. How can you have human connection and at the same time do it in a convenient way? And so this is what we're calling experiential convenience. That concept of bringing together convenience, human connection, customization, so that customers are getting that full package of what's relevant for them. Sheree and I had a very interesting conversation yesterday around human connection, and is it really relevant anymore? And my response was absolutely. It may not be the traditional human connection with barista and customer. Certainly that's important. But it can also be, how can we connect with a customer digitally? How can we connect with a customer as they're coming in and picking up their mobile order, and where there may not even be a conversation or very limited conversation? So the concept of human connection will evolve. So quick summarize. We've grown from 1 store to 37,000 stores around the world. The premise of that has been around the highest quality Arabica coffee and the connection a customer has with their barista, their brand, or the product. And we understand the emerging needs of customers, and we're quickly able to adapt. As I mentioned, cold coffee is hot, customers want to create, and customization is key. And the thing I also want to connect is that fragile balance and symbiotic relationship that growing consumption and taking care of farmers and protecting coffee origin has. And so for us, both are equally critical and important, and where we want to focus our time. That balance allows all of us to grow as an industry. That balance allows farmers to be prosperous, to be sustainable, and to adapt to climate change. And at the end of the day, we're offering the most superior product to customers and have a thriving planet where people can enjoy that beautiful product. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. You connected all the dots from the farm to the cup and what all is contributing to the growth and experience of enjoying a good cup of coffee. I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs in this room, budding entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, are looking for clues to find place for themselves in terms of experiencing the growth and experimenting. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions to seek more guidance and truly, I think the Starbucks experience is something everyone is looking forward to as to what to draw out of your experiences so that we can use them in the field. Thank you. Now may I request Dr. Koa Dong Lee to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Bruno. Hello, everyone. Hello, Bengaluru. That's my first time ever in India, and very happy to see all of you here as a coffee lovers. I hope so, as I do so. So I started my career as a coffee protector in Wazi since 2002 until now. I'm still keen on working as a coffee protector at my organization, Wazi in Vietnam, located in Central Highlands of Vietnam. So I truly believe that it still have a very strong connection between the coffee production and coffee consumption. And I think the way we do the good coffee production, we will increase the number of people using coffee more and more around the world. So for the Vietnamese government, we also think that way, and the government of Vietnam have a strong support to the coffee growers in Vietnam. And my talk now focus more in Vietnam, how we produce coffee and how we increase the coffee consumption in Vietnam by ourselves, and also convince the people around the world to drink coffee produced from Vietnam. So as you all may know that coffee is produced in the tropicals, between the tropicals of Cancer and Capricorn. So it includes several countries produce coffee in the world: Vietnam, Brazil, India, Uganda, Mexico, Colombia, and so on. We have around more than 70 nations producing coffee around the world. And this is the coffee belt that you may heard about. And for Vietnam, we produce both Robusta and Arabica. For Robusta, but mainly is focused on Robusta. We produce about 1.9 million metric tons annually, and 80% of that production for exporting, and we consume 20% of our product domestically. The Robusta coffee mainly grow it in Central Highlands, where I live now. It's more than 90% of coffee produced in Vietnam in Central Highlands of Vietnam. And the average yield of coffee in Vietnam is 2.8 metric tons per hectare, which is quite high compared to the average yield of the world. And nowadays, the people from the north of Vietnam keen on drinking coffee rather than drink tea. And the area of Arabica coffee is now increased more and more in Vietnam, especially in north of Vietnam, where it's very close to the China border. About 40,000 hectares of Arabica growing in Vietnam, and 30,000 hectare of Arabica is grown in north of Vietnam. And we changed from the rubber land to and tea land to the coffee land right now. It's continue growing. And we do consume more and more coffee locally. And the coffee from Vietnam I export to around the world now, about more than 80 countries around the world buying coffee from Vietnam. As I said, the coffee area of Vietnam is growing quickly. Back to 2010, we just have around more than 500,000 hectares of coffee. But in 2021, we already get up to 700,000, more than 700,000 hectares, including Arabica and Robusta. And Arabica now is about 40,000 hectares, and most in north of Vietnam and the rest in Central Highland, but just focus on Lâm Đồng province and Kon Tum province only. As for the yield I just mentioned, yet the yield now in 2022, we already know that we have data get that the average yield is 2.8. But in the charts here, you see we just have data from 2005 and up to 2021. So by 2021, we get 2.6, almost 2.7 metric ton per hectare, compared to some country like Indonesia, Brazil, and the rest of the world. As we know that the Vietnamese average yield of coffee is 1.5 times higher than that of Brazil, and 4.5 times that of the coffee produced in Indonesia. So with the high yield of coffee, we have a small land, but we are still able to produce more and more coffee. And as I mentioned earlier, yes, coffee produced from Vietnam exporting to several countries around the world. And the European countries is still the biggest market for coffee in Vietnam. And the second one is the US, and Russia, China, and several nations around the world. Yes, in total, the data that we got in 2022, we exported totally all of the product from coffee. We exported 1.9 million metric tons to the world. And it's in terms of the green bean, in terms of for both Robusta and Arabica, also some coffee powder, and also the another processed product from coffee as well. And for the benefits, we got around up to $4 billion. Just only coffee that contribute a lot to the GDP of Vietnam. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, although we are able to produce more and more coffee for the world, but we still get a lot of trouble, difficulties by doing the intensive system to produce Robusta coffee in Vietnam. One of that I would love to say is about the supply and demand balance. So sometimes the demand of the world is like reduced, then the production of coffee in Vietnam reduced too. And the farmer get like a small number of monies, then they change to another crop really quickly. And when the price of coffee increase, then the farmer turning back to the coffee very quick. As we have the grafting technique as well, we don't need to replant the coffee tree, but also we can apply the grafting technique to rejuvenate the aging coffee plant. The farmer in Vietnam, they don't want to uprooting their coffee. They can just like a pruning or keep that tree not many attention. So they should keep it in the field, not invest any more money for the coffee plantation. But whenever the coffee price going up, then they can apply pruning, the grafting technique, then the coffee plantation become growing well again. So that's the way we still doing in Vietnam. Yes, and another challenge is that the climate change that I may mention here, for you to know in the reality the climate change it affects a lot, not only on coffee, but also for another perennials. In terms of like the drought issue in Vietnam, in Central Highlands, we use a lot of water for watering during 6 months of dry season. For the first watering, we need to apply more than 300 liters per tree, which is a lot of water we use during the dry season. And now the climate change it's really effect on coffee growing in Vietnam, as the groundwater is softened very quick. And the government, as I mentioned, we do a lot of effort to help the farmer to improve the farmer's skill and knowledge in produce coffee sustainably and friendly environment. Then we support them by doing through the training course for the farmer to learn from and to let them understand more about how important to protect the environment where the coffee is going. And also, I spend more and more the Arabica coffee for the farmer, which is some area can growing tea before, but now the tea is not the big fan for a lot of farmers. Then they can replant by tea by coffee, especially for Arabica coffee. And as I said, we do a lot of training for a farmer, and we got the government got a lot of support from NGO, private partner like Nestle, JDE, or a lot of trader roaster as well. They have the Vietnamese coffee farmers to produce more and more coffee in the safer way, which is reduce the fertilizer using, chemical using, to avoid any chemical contamination in the coffee green bean. Then on that way, I truly believe that with the safer coffee green bean, then the consumer around the world can drink more and more coffee, and because the coffee, which is like very good for the human health, as Bruno mentioned. So I would love to say thanks for your work, Bruno, to let people around the world know that there are a lot of benefits from the drinking coffee. So yes, so I forgot to mention about some trading solution from the Vietnamese government as well. So as I mentioned before, the producing solution to support the sustainable and green growth of coffee in Vietnam, we also focus on the trading solution as well. And we apply the FTR and how it's like can have the farmer benefit more from exporting their coffee and promote the promotion with high quality. In the past, we just focus on the yield, how to increase the yield of coffee in Vietnam, but now the farmer keen on improve the quality of coffee by applying the waste processing, like have the ripened cherry rather than the green cherry before. That is the way they can improve the quality of coffee. And also we make some program related to with fair trading, and also the government provide more and more the information from the global market for the farmer to understand more about the market, how it's changing for them to adapt well with the demand of the global market. And so here's some picture that you may, this kind of system is quite common, be seen in central highland of Vietnam now. The farmer keen on to intercrop more fruit tree in their coffee plantations. In the past, we applied intensive and monocultivation of coffee, which has produced more coffee, but it's not really good quality. Then we encourage and recommend the farmer to incrop more their farm with fruit trees such as peppercorn, durian, and several the crop. Yeah, so support to the green growth and sustainable development of coffee in Vietnam. We also keep the support of many organizations which is certified the organic coffee, the high quality coffee. We have some code like a 4C or Rainforest Alliance or many global like the organic certification as well. So those certifications for coffee is contribute a lot to the green growth and sustainable development of Vietnamese coffee to be able to produce more, produce safer coffee green bean to the rest of the world. So that's all about my talk. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khowa-Dang-Lay. You have explained at great length about how Vietnam has aligned itself to the growing market in the coffee and what all you have been doing. And possibly we are looking forward to see, of late, the consumption in Vietnam has been going up, especially in the northern part of the country. And I think Vietnam is looking forward for increasing that manifold in the coming years. Thank you. May I request Mr. Bernard to make his presentation now?
Good everyone. First, I think I would like to express my joy at being here. I've never been to India again, and it's a wonderful place. The presentation I'm going to make was not supposed to be made by me. It is my colleague and my boss who was supposed to be here, but because he couldn't make it here, I am here on his behalf, and I'll be talking about the actions taken by the government of Kenya to increase domestic coffee consumption. For your interest, Kenya is primarily a tea drinking country. And so when we are talking of increasing domestic consumption of coffee, we are talking of like an uphill task where we have to convince someone who was taking tea to replace that cup of tea with a cup of coffee. And it has been an exciting journey. We have made tremendous progress in growing the coffee consumption culture in Kenya. Just a few points to note. I'm sure most of us are aware of the coffee paradox. We realize that consumption of coffee takes place mainly in the north, and over 90% of global coffee production takes place in the south. So it is in the south where low coffee prices to coffee farmers is experienced, whereas in the north, we have high coffee prices for coffee cup in those countries where coffee is consumed. So when the farmer is complaining on one end of low prices, the consumer is complaining on the other end of high prices for a cup of coffee. The production-consumption pattern provides insights on the North-South economic relations. A coffee crisis in coffee-producing countries has been there because of low coffee prices. Just as a highlight, and my friend has alluded to this, we have an insight into the global coffee production patterns, and we can see the people who grow, a lot of coffee. So when it comes to suffering, these are the areas where low prices of coffee also cause a lot of suffering. In Kenya, we are not even in the list because Kenya is a small coffee producing country and we are price takers. And so, looking at the scenario, something had to be done. Looking at the global coffee consumption trend during the last 5 years, we can see the countries of the world by their consumption of coffee in the last 5 years. And again, looking at Africa as a continent with about 55 countries, we can see how it is performing vis-a-vis the other countries. So what this tells us, in real sense, is that most coffee-producing countries are actually not good coffee-consuming countries. And that is a paradigm that needs to change. The transformation of domestic coffee consumption in Kenya goes back many years, but for our interest, starting up to 1963, coffee was grown and exported as a raw commodity. And by 1970, coffee was viewed as an elitist beverage. As I said, many people are tea drinkers, so it was seen as an elitist beverage. In the 70s, 1977 to be precise, the institution I work for established coffee houses in strategic towns across the country just to start promoting domestic coffee consumption. 10 years later, we all remember the SARS that swept across the world, and across Africa, the African continent, it offered a palliative medicine prescription for pure economies of Africa. In 1989, the world coffee economies were affected by the spread of free market ideologies. Remember, that is when the International Coffee Agreement collapsed. And in 1992, the defunct Coffee Board closed all the coffee houses that had been established. This continued until in 1994 when we started seeing the growth of multinational institutions for the export of raw coffee in Kenya. And in 1997, we had the first private coffee house established by a multinational company. In 1998, a survey shows consumption level was below 0.2% of the country's national production. But come the year 2009, we had 27 coffee houses established in Kenya. In 2012, just about 10 years ago, a baseline survey was conducted, and it was found that there were 37 coffee houses. As per last year, a survey that was conducted shows we had 506 coffee houses, and domestic consumption had risen to 3.8%. That was tremendous growth, appreciating that as per last year, we had more coffee houses than what Starbucks has across India. What has the government done? The government has put its action in promoting domestic coffee consumption, and through this, a Department of Coffee Market Research and Product Development has been established and has been carrying out a lot of work to promote this. A lot of research has been done. On the legal front, the legal framework has been made much simpler to allow for coffee value addition by coffee growers and other value of chain players. There has been aggressive domestic coffee consumption promotion campaigns in the country, including partnerships and collaborations with institutions such as the ICO, the Inter-Africa Coffee Organization, the non-governmental organization, and the Kenyan universities. The critical success factors in this has been understanding and partnering with the middle income group in Kenya, who have got a little bit more of disposable income that they can spend on coffee. Sponsoring of youth events in Kenyan universities, such as during the career weeks and cultural weeks, agribusiness expos, scientific conferences, the Kenyan government is always present to promote coffee consumption. There is a good rapport with the universities. We have over 22 public universities and a number of private universities, so the coffee government has established a very good rapport with those universities to promote coffee consumption. One may wonder why the universities. The reason is because, as I said earlier, Kenya being a tea-consuming country, the only people whose tastes can be changed and preferences are the youth, and these are found mainly in the universities. That collaboration has seen coffee consumption in the country take an upward trajectory. Suffice to say, through the collaboration of Inter-Africa Coffee Organization, sponsorship, and the government of Kenya, we have already been able to open coffee houses in 2 public universities, one called the Kenyatta University and the Egerton University. And as we speak, we have got several universities waiting for that initiative to take place, because once the youth are sensitized, they carry that with them to where they go, and they continue taking coffee even into their adulthood. Looking at the national coffee production against the consumption, we can see there has been, the coffee production has been faltering, but the consumption has experienced a steady growth. When we look at where Kenya is, the contribution of this growth in the coffee consumption is not only the Kenyan coffee, but we have been getting coffee also from the neighboring countries. Remember, when the global north is consuming coffee, that coffee has to be value added. And in value addition, there is more money. Suffice to say, as per the year 2021, Kenya was the 6th export destination of Rwandan coffee, which means by value adding and trading with each other, there is value added to all of us as partners in the coffee production. This is the same idea that the African coffee producing countries have been promoting through what we call the G25, which is the coming together of 24 coffee growing countries in Africa and one coffee consuming country. And through that, and through the African Free Trade Area, we can be able to have a market in Africa even before we start going across the waters, because there is demand for coffee in Africa. Just to show where the coffee houses are, they are all concentrated in either the big cities or the tourist centers where the tourists go. That is where most of the coffee shops are situated. This scenario is slowly changing through this sensitization, and this is spreading to other countries. Just to show the growth, the trade that has been there, and the local consumption, we can see the number of bags have increased in 2009-2010 from 8,000 bags to where we are in 2021-2022, 28,000 bags. That is tremendous growth. And this has been on a steady rise for the last, especially the last 1.5 decades. It is something we are very happy about. These are the universities where we are having partnerships and others on the waiting list so that we can reach them with an initiative like a coffee house or value addition center in those universities. Do we have opportunities? Yes. Kenyan coffee is globally known for its quality, and that is something we can leverage on. The quality is more, which means if we increase quantity, that is an opportunity. The prices that are obtained are very attractive, especially by our farmers, because of the quality of our coffees. And we have improved supply chains. So we have opportunities locally for the coffee sector to grow the domestic consumption. Simplification of procedures has contributed a lot in both value addition and domestic consumption. Have we faced some roadblocks? Yes. We have the existence of international treaties, the Lome Convention between ACP member countries and the European Union. We have tariff and non-tariff barriers, and high cost of value addition equipment, which most of them are imported. Those are some of the barriers that we have experienced. At take home, our experience is that when the domestic coffee consumption grows, it contributes directly to the growth of the GDP in the country. So from here, I trust all of us will be good coffee ambassadors so that we are able to grow our domestic coffee consumption. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard, for explaining to the delegates as to what's happening in Kenya and how the Africa is rethinking about how to deal with the coffee industry. We know under the aegis of IACO, all African countries are, especially in the last couple of years, they have really thought over as to how to value add within Africa and reduce the raw coffee exports and then start growing the consumption within the countries. We hope the collective effort of African coffee producing countries will succeed in the coming years in a way that possibly it mirrors what has happened in Brazil 20 years ago. Thank you, Bernard. Now the floor is open for questions and discussion? Yeah. Hello. Can you give the mic here? Yeah.
Hi. This is a question for Kelly. Kelly, I've been single for too long, and I'm trying to inspire Starbucks to start a speed
Can you
meeting.
identify yourself before asking the question?
Hi,
Yeah.
I head the corporate social responsibility for Tata Coffee. And my question is, how can I inspire Starbucks, which is a lovely place to go, to have speed meetings and speed datings too?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
I'm just voicing my opinion of being a single person for very long, that if Starbucks could be inspired to have speed meetings and speed datings days too.
I would love to connect with you afterwards. I want to make sure I understand the question. So let's connect afterwards if that's okay. Just so you know, we are always open to sharing what we do with others. Certainly, we have an open source approach. We appreciate sharing what we're learning, and yeah, welcome questions.
By when you'll be water positive?
Oh, water. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a little challenging hearing from up here. Just saying that. So, as part of our broader enterprise sustainability goals, we absolutely have commitments to reduce our water footprint by 50% over the next 6-7 years. So that's the goal and progress that we're making as an enterprise across the company. And that's both through reduction in our stores and through replenishment in water systems around the world. In the value chain and across our retail footprint as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to thank the speakers. My name is Fred Kauma, immediate past Secretary General of the Inter-Africa.
Can you be a
Coffee
little
Organization.
louder?
Yes, I said my name is Fred Kauma, the immediate past Secretary General of the Inter-Africa Coffee Organization. I want to thank all the speakers, and I want to thank Bernard for that presentation. Kenya, we've done quite a bit of work there. I wanted to ask the professor, when you talked about the health hazards, especially associated with boiling the coffee, probably it would be a good idea to do a study in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been the Ethiopians have been drinking coffee for many years, and precisely boiling the coffee the way that you said is a great risk. And the Ethiopian population has been growing, they're continuing to grow, and they're quite healthy. I don't know what you have to say about, are there certain studies that have been done with populations such as what we have in Ethiopia or other countries that would show something different? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. The boiled coffee, the problem is the terpenes that can increase the cholesterol. In our research, we see that the cholesterol, the total cholesterol increase, but HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol increase too. The impact of this is not so much, it's not clear, but I think that this is a problem, the coffee not filtered, for persons that have a dyslipidemia, that have high levels of cholesterol, I think.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Akanksha, and I had a question to Dr. Bruno. In one of the slides, you had mentioned that coffee consumption can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So it's like a proactive measure, or if someone has Parkinson's, because I have a personal experience, my mom is suffering from Parkinson's. So I wanted to know that in case she is suffering from Parkinson's for 3 to 4 years, is it beneficial for her also to consume it?
Probably the benefits is because the caffeine, the stimulant effect of caffeine. And I think that chlorogenic acids, because the potential antioxidant can be responsible for part of this action. But we don't have studies that, the studies in general are epidemiological studies. These studies shows the association, but don't prove causality, okay? And we not can know specifically what substance can the benefits in this case, okay? And for example, for treatment, I prefer the medications, okay? I can do the prevention, the reduced risk of Parkinson, the reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease with the persons that consume coffee.
Good afternoon. I'm Sriramlu from Tamil Nadu. We have a plantation in Kodaikanal. So my message is to Miss Kelly. It's a Thanksgiving message. So your first outlet was in Seattle. My son works for Apple at Seattle. I have also been to your world's largest Starbucks outlet at Chicago. I had a chance to go and see all your facilities there. And what I noticed was the name India was not there in your sourcing list. So now I find today you have a Diwali coffee and you also have other brands that is related to India. I am really thankful to you for bringing out the Indian coffee to the world and putting us onto the center stage and giving us the priority that we expect. So it's a Thanksgiving message. I thank you again.
Is there a question?
It's just a Thanksgiving message.
Okay,
I thank you.
Hi, my name is Sneha. Thanks to all the speakers primarily. It was very insightful. My question is to Ms. Kelly. You had discussed global trends and how they are being leveraged in Starbucks in the cafe setup, right? While you also have a packaged food and beverages segment. I just wanted to know what's the treatment and how is it different for packaged foods and beverages, let's say customization or things like that, for example.
Thank you for the question. So a lot of the global trends were related to the beverages, but to your point of packaged coffee, we see a lot of the same things coming to fruition, but in different ways. Customers want diversity, they want convenience, and a lot of that is coming through different packaged options. And so diversity of blends, flavors, diversity of product type, and certainly convenience are how that comes through.
If I take it forward, at a global level, in Starbucks, what proportion of your business is contributed by the food, what proportion by coffee? What proportion of your business at a global level in Starbucks, business is contributed from the food, and what from coffee?
So the large percentage, major percentages, of course, are coffee beverages.
Okay.
That's our core. That's the driver for customers. But our food business is certainly strong.
On health or happiness, I don't know.
Yes.
Because coffee.
In Brazil, one group of researchers studied exactly this. And they put a person in a magnetic resonance that can available the activity of system nervous system and see that with the smell of coffee, you can activate specific areas of happiness and that good things. Okay, that's totally is associated to the habit, to the pleasure that coffee for one person that drinks heavy with drink coffee, and the smell can activate these areas. This is so interesting.
A specific question was that lungs and nose are related organs. That's what they say. Every 5 senses has a part of the organ that's related. So I was thinking, is there any research done on how it affects our lungs because of our sensory inputs that we get from our nose? This is something that I was curious to know if there's any research done relating health of lungs and smell.
Lungs?
That's what they say, that every part of the 5 senses
Yeah.
is correlated directly to one part of your organ, and here
Okay.
the nose is related to the lungs. So.
For example, caffeine have a good effect. Caffeine have a bronchodilator effect, and we use caffeine, for example, in newborns to treat apnea related to the I don't know the term in English. Just a minute. For premature babies, for example, they use caffeine to treat apnea, for example, in these premature babies.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your presentations today.
Can you hold it a little closer?
I am Arpit Vashisht, Risk Manager from Vol Cafe. My question is to Kelly, Mr. Bernard, and Dr. Koa. So what are, how do you estimate the new EU deforestation regulations will
Estimate
affect?
what?
The new EU deforestation regulation will affect the diversity of the origins that you use. And similarly, what are the origins doing in terms of training their farmers for documentation around the EU deforestation regulations? And how do you see it affecting the coffee industry as a whole?
So I'm happy to take that question, and thank you for it. As I mentioned, for Starbucks, we have been implementing our cafe practices program, Coffee and Farmer Equity, for over 20 years. And a core tenet of cafe practices is transparency. So through our program, we understand every farmer in our supply chain, we know the location, and as part of cafe practices, we have been assessing and looking at biodiversity, deforestation, and other environmental factors for those 2 decades. So yes, we have been tracking the EU deforestation policy closely. We are built to meet that regulation, and quite frankly, it will take the industry to come together so that we can not put all of our focus on this, but we can continue to support farmers in the needs that they have. So deforestation is a very critical component. It's something that we care deeply about, and we want to provide a holistic support center. So training, economic performance, donation of coffee trees that are climate resilient, other research and development innovations, empowering women. This is part of the suite of things that we do across the 30 origins that we are engaged in.
Yeah, I would add more for Kelly respond to your question in terms of deforestation or increase the biodiversity or diversity of the coffee plantation, not just in Vietnam, but also the rest of the producing nations around the world. As now, the EU's markets, they set up the new regulation for the coffee exporting from the producing country like Vietnam or any other country, that the coffee grow in the original forest land gonna not be able to import it to the EU market. So for that reason, several NGOs such as SNV or IDH in Vietnam, they support the farmer a lot with training and
with the like a spread the new regulation from the EU's market, for farmers understand that the more they increase the diversification of their diversify of their coffee, the better income they may get from the coffee and from the other product, from the fruit tree or even from timber tree that they incorporate in the coffee plantation. So, as I mentioned before, the safer coffee you produce, the better quality and better income the farmer will get.
Dang, show us a beautiful picture about coffee plantation in a rainforest. That's a beautiful picture, Dang.
Thank you. I have another question for Dr.
This is the last question. Yeah. You have one more? Then be brief, please.
Yeah, very brief. This is for Dr. Bruno. So, in your presentation, you told that human body get acclimatized to the caffeine in the coffee, and so like there is a tolerance built. And then you have also told that it helps with hypertension and other cardiovascular diseases. What about people like somebody like my father who is 60 plus and he has hypertension and he's not used to coffee yet. So at that age, would coffee be a good proactive measure, and at that age can you still build your immunity to the caffeine?
I think it is similar to what he responded in the context of Alzheimer's.
For hypertension, for a chronic coffee intake, the person generally develops tolerance to these effects of caffeine. And for chronic coffee intake, caffeine don't have a significant effect on blood pressure or to cause or worsen the hypertension. I think that when you chronic in habitual coffee consumption, these effects of caffeine are totally disappears with the tolerance. And the most important thing is the great quantity of antioxidants that having in coffee, and have a potential benefits to cardiovascular disease, and coffee is secure in persons that have cardiovascular risk too, okay? I think that if it's a habit, if a habitual coffee drinker, that's okay, that's perfect. But sporadic drinking coffee is related to acute elevation of blood pressure and can be a trigger for example, a myocardial infarction. For example, in sporadic coffee consumption. For example, I need to study for a test. I will drink a lot of coffee, but I don't drink coffee usually. This is a thing that can be a trigger for a myocardial infarction, for example.
Thank you, Bruno, for this cautionary note. Yeah, hello. This is the last question, please.
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon. I am Manjunath Olekar representing Alana Coffee from Certification Division. So this question is to Dr. Kohav and Bernard. Can you please highlight me regarding the certifications with regard to the sustainability? Like what certifications do you have? And Mr. Bernard, can you please highlight me what the coffee consumption with regard to the certification?
So if I fully understand your question.
Now, what certifications do you have in your country? And with regard to the coffee consumption, is there any coffee consumption with regard to the sustainability certifications?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for questioning me. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier in my slides, we have several certifications in Vietnam. We got 4C, who certified Rainforest Fair Trade, blah, blah. And those certification is, they have to do the have a third party to the audition every year to make sure that the farmer following the course that certification apply on their farm. And they, for farmer, they still happy with the small bonus that the company pay back to them if they apply those certification. But the benefits they realize that for the environment, for their younger generation, their children, their grandchildren later on, because with the application of those certifications, their farm become like more sustainability, and the water, the groundwater they use every year, it seems to be never empty. So with more, all of the certificates require the farmer to protect the biodiversity of their farms. So they keep applying that certification for not just only for their own life, but for their children's life, the next generation as well. So that's what all of the certification of coffee in Vietnam still remaining, and the farmers still want to apply those certifications so far.
Thank you, Dr. Koh. Mr. Bernard, can you please?
Pardon?
This question is also to Mr. Bernard.
A response from you also for the same question
Yes.
as to what is happening in Kenya.
In Kenya, the certification programs are driven by various NGOs, and because our farmers are able to earn a premium, they are very keen on following up on those certification programs. So it is something that I may not be able to quantify how much coffee in Kenya is certified, but we have quite a good proportion of our producers, especially the cooperative societies, who are certified under various certification programs. And the main attraction is the bonuses, the premiums they are able to get from selling their certified coffees. So it is something we are very keen on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all the panelists for your contribution to the discussion on increasing the consumption of coffee. Though it may appear the data on consumption is not there on the table. But the take-home message is consumption cannot be handled merely focusing on what is the consumption. It is the whole chain, starting from the production to the cup, from the bean, from the seed to the cup, the entire practices have to be sustainable, and the focus has to be on the quality. As long as we retain and improve the quality of the coffee in the entire chain, it is likely to drive the consumption. And though we don't have a presentation as to the experience in India, it is known, especially in the last 5-6 years, the type of startups that have come up, and so much of excitement happening around the coffee startups. Everyone, if you go to the other side and talk to the people who have put up the stalls, everyone is excited about the experience of whatever growth they have been seeing. Each one of them is experiencing double-digit growth. Some of them are experiencing 40%, 50% annualized growth in the last 3 years, despite the pandemic. So there are different experiences to share. Each one is focusing on a separate aspect of the coffee experience, and that is the way to go forward. And I'm sure we have an exciting future as long as we improve the quality of the coffee that is supplied to the consumer. With this note, I would conclude this session. Thank you all for your interest.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of seconds more. I request Dr. N.N. Narendra, Director of Finance Coffee Board, to kindly come and honor the panelists. to Mr. Shri G.V. Krishna Rao, former Chairman, Coffee Board of India. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir, for being here and moderating this session. Dr. Bruno Mioto, who is the consultant at Heart Institute. Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us. To Ms. Kelly Goodjohn, Vice President, Global Coffee Sustainability and Education, Starbucks. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Koa Dangli. To Dr. Koa Dangli. General Research Manager, Western Highlands Agroforestry Science Institute. Thank you, sir. To Mr. Bernard. Who is Deputy Director, Regulation and Compliance, Agriculture and Food Authority. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen.